Jane Eyre, Chapter 14, Part 1. For several subsequent days I saw little of Mr. Rochester. In the mornings he seemed much engaged with business, and in the afternoon gentlemen from Millcote or the neighbourhood called, and sometimes stayed to dine with him. When his brain was well enough to admit of horse exercise, he rode out a good deal, probably to return these visits, as he generally did not come back till late at night. During this interval, even Adele was seldom sent for to his presence, and all my acquaintance with him was confined to an occasional rencontre in the hall, on the stairs, or in the gallery, when he would sometimes pass me haughtily and coldly, just acknowledging my presence by a distant nod or a cool glance, and sometimes bow and smile with gentlemanlike affability. His changes of mood did not offend me, because I saw that I had nothing to do with their alternation. The ebb and flow depended on causes quite disconnected with me. One day he had had company to dinner, and had sent for my portfolio, in order doubtless to exhibit its contents. The gentlemen went away early to attend a public meeting at Millcote, as Mrs. Fairfax informed me, but the night being wet and inclement, Mr. Rochester did not accompany them. Soon after they were gone, he rang the bell. A message came that I and Adele were to go downstairs. I brushed Adele's hair and made her neat, and having ascertained that I was myself in my usual Quaker trim, where there was nothing to retouch, all being too close and plain, braided locks included, to admit of disarrangement, we descended, Adele wondering whether the gift was at length come, for, owing to some mistake, its arrival had hitherto been delayed. She was gratified. There it stood, a little carton on the table when we entered the dining-room. She appeared to know it by instinct. My boit, exclaimed she, running towards it. Yes, there's your boit at the last. Take it into a corner, you genuine daughter of Paris, and amuse yourself with disemboweling it, said the deep and rather sarcastic voice of Mr. Rochester, proceeding from the depths of an immense easy-chair at the fireside. And mind, he continued, don't bother me with any details of the anatomical process, or any notice of the condition of the entrails. Let your operation be conducted on silence. Tins tu tranquille enfant. Comprendez-tu? Adele seemed scarcely to need the warnings. She had already retired to a sofa with her treasure, and was busy untying the cord which secured the lid. Having removed this impediment and lifted certain silvery envelopes of tissue paper, she merely exclaimed, "Oh ciel, que c'est beau!" and then remained absorbed in ecstatic contemplation. Is Miss Eyre there? Now demanded the master, half rising from his seat to look round to the door near which I still stood. Ah, well, come forward, be seated. He drew a chair near his own. I am not fond of the prattle of children, he continued, for old bachelor as I am, I have no pleasant association connected with their lisp. It would be intolerable to me to pass a whole evening tete-a-tete with a brat. Don't draw that chair further off, Miss Eyre. Sit down exactly where I placed it, if you please, that is. Confound these civilities. I continually forget them, nor do I particularly affect simple-minded old ladies. By the by, I must have mine in mind. It won't do to neglect her. She is a Fairfax, or wed to one, and blood is said to be thicker than water. He rang and dispatched an invitation to Mrs. Fairfax, who soon arrived, knitting basket in hand. Good evening, madam. I sent to you for a charitable purpose. I have forbidden Adele to talk to me about her presents, and she is bursting with repletion. Have the goodness to serve her as auditress and interlocutress. It will be one of the most benevolent acts you have ever performed. Adele, indeed, no sooner saw Mrs. Fairfax than she summoned her to her sofa, and there quickly filled her lap with the porcelain, the ivory, the waxen contics of her boite, pouring out meantime explanations and raptures in such broken English as she was mistress of. Now I have performed the part of a good host, pursued Mr. Rochester. Put my guests into the way of amusing each other. I ought to be at liberty to attend to my own pleasure. Miss Eyre, draw your chair still a little further forward. You are yet too far back. I cannot see you without disturbing my position in this comfortable chair, which I have no mind to do. I did as I was bid, though I would much rather have remained somewhat in the shade. But Mr. Rochester had such a direct way of giving orders, it seemed a matter of course to obey him promptly. We were, as I have said, in the dining-room. The lustre which had been lit for dinner filled the room with a festal breath of light. The large fire was all red and clear. The purple curtains hung rich and ample before the lofty window and loftier arch. Everything was still save the subdued chat of Adele. She dared not speak loud, and, filling up each pause, the beating of winter rain against the panes. Mr. Rochester, as he sat in the damask-covered chair, looked indifferent to what I had seen him look before. not quite so stern, much less gloomy. There was a smile on his lips, and his eyes sparkled, whether with wine or not I am not sure, but I think it very probable. He was, in short, in his after-dinner mood, more expanded and genial, and almost more self-indulgent than the frigid and rigid temper of the mornings. Still he looked preciously grim, cushioning his massive head against the swelling back of the chair, and receiving the light of the fire on his granite-hewn features and in his great dark eyes, for he had great dark eyes, and very fine eyes too, not without a certain change in their depths sometimes, which, if it was not softness, reminded you at least of that feeling. He had been looking 2 minutes at the fire, and I had been looking at the same length of time at him, when, turning suddenly, he caught my gaze fastened on his physiognomy. "You examine me, Miss Eyre," said he. "Do you think me handsome?" I should, if I had deliberated, have said to the question by something conventionally vague and polite, but the answer somehow slipped from my tongue before I was aware. "No, sir." "Ah, by my word, there is something singular about you," said he. "You have the air of a little nonnette, quaint, quiet, grave, and simple, as you sit with your hands before you and your eyes generally bent on the carpet, except by the by when you are directed piercingly to my face, as just now, for instance, and when one asks you a question or makes a remark to which you are obliged to reply, you rap out a round rejoinder, which, if not blunt, is at least brusque. What do you mean by it?" "Sir, I was too plain. I beg your pardon. I ought to have replied that it was not easy to give an impromptu answer to a question about appearances, that tastes differ, that beauty is of little consequence, or something of that sort." "You ought to have replied no such thing. Beauty of little consequence indeed, and so, under pretense of softening the previous outrage, of stroking and soothing me into placidity, you stick a sly penknife under my ear. Go on. What fault do you find with me, pray? I suppose I have all my limbs and all my features like any other man." "Mr. Rochester, allow me to disown my first answer. I intended no pointed repartee. It was only a blunder." "Just so. I think so. And you shall be answerable for it. Criticize me. Does my forehead not please you?" He lifted up the sable waves of hair which lay horizontally over his brow and showed a solid enough mass of intellectual organs, but an abrupt deficiency where the suave sign of benevolence should have risen. "No, ma'am. Am I a fool?" "Far from it. You would, perhaps, think me rude if I required in return whether you are a philanthropist." There again, another stick of the penknife when she pretended to pat my head. "And that is because I said I did not like the society of children and old women. Low be it spoken. No, young lady, I am not a general philanthropist, but I bear a conscience." And he pointed to the prominences which are said to indicate that faculty, and which, fortunately for him, were sufficiently conspicuous, giving, indeed, a marked breadth to the upper part of the head. "And besides, I once had a kind of rude tenderness of heart. When I was old as you, I was a feeling fellow enough, partial to the unfledged, unfostered, and unlucky. But fortune has knocked me about since. She has even kneaded me with her knuckles, and now I flatter myself I am hard and tough as an india-rubber ball, pervious, though, through a chink or two still, and with one sentient point in the middle of the lump. Yes, does that leave hope for me?" "Hope of what, sir?" "Of my final retransformation from india-rubber back to flesh." Decidedly he has had too much wine, I thought, and I did not know what answer to make to his queer question. How could I tell whether he was capable of being retransformed?